It's usually what I do when I study for an exam. I have no idea what I'm studying
Yeah,
for.
that's never.
2:30.
Well,
Oh, okay, so that, yeah, then that's why he's my child won't watch. So like, I let him escape.
All right, I think we're good. Should we be good here? Yep. Let's see if. Oh boy.
Oh, we're getting a couple here.
Oh, we got a couple. Oh.
Oh, now it's not like once you mouse over it, it's trying to.
The North Pacific's loading. That's good. We can talk about the North Pacific. That's good. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
it's getting
maybe
there.
it's something with the browser. I don't know.
All right, I think we're ready here.
Just
Right now.
and then- Okay. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for your patience here for a couple minutes while we get everything sorted out with loading up loops and loading up the Hangout. Very happy to have a good friend of mine here today, Dan DePodwin. Actually, we went through Urban together. We also went through some classes together, too, towards the end. But he's here. He's a recent graduate. Maybe you probably recognize him. He's now a forecaster at AccuWeather. Started as soon as he graduated, pretty much. So we're happy to have Dan here. There's a lot going on. I'll let him take over.
Thanks, Dan. As he mentioned, there's a lot going on. Maybe not today. We just have obviously a very nice day for the early part of November after what was a pretty chilly weekend. But I got a few different portions here. There's a lot of stuff going on globally too in the weather with Vance down in the Eastern Pacific and then Uri over in the Western Pacific. And I'll talk briefly too about just a quick look at the winter. Not too in depth, but just a few things I was poking around and I found the other day. No. No. That is the AccuWeather canned image on the external presentation template. Apparently that's what we do when we give presentations to other clients. We put random people on our PowerPoints. So, no, I don't know that person. A quick look at the state of ENSO right now in the Pacific. Back in, I guess it was March or April, there was all this talk about a super El Nino, and we could see one of the strongest ones that might rival 98, the 97, 98, that time period. And it's sort of been like we've been predicting an El Nino. The models have been showing it for a while, and it never has really materialized. And on the left is the chances of El Nino here in October, November, December, then we're out here through the winter time. You see there's best chances for El Nino to develop, but if you look at the plumes here of all the different models, just slightly positive. Doesn't look like it's going to be a strong El Nino, so that obviously plays into the winter forecast across the U.S. and across the world. So it seems like neutral to slightly positive in the next 6 months or so, but the super El Nino that some predicted because it never really turned out here, and we seem to just been sort of stuck in a neutral to just slightly positive state. So I did a very crude analysis. Don't publish this or anything like that. But of all the different winters since 1950 that had El Nino conditions similar to what it has been over the past 4, 5, 6 months, and came up with these years down here, 12 years I believe. And just did a composite mean on the ESRL composite site using all the reanalysis data. And in those years, from December to March, you had this mean 500 millibar pattern across the U.S., which is interesting, and that's sort of been what a lot of the predictions have been for this winter so far, with the mean trough in the east and sort of a cooler than normal pattern across the Midwest and the Great Lakes. And these are the 500 millibar height anomalies in those years as well. You see below normal height anomalies across much of the U.S. You even see, these split in the jet stream. Sort of, you have the subtropical branch here and the northern branch up here. So, just a very crude analysis of what the 500 millibar pattern might be here as we head into the winter time, using previous analog years. And a lot's been talked about over the past couple of weeks about the snow cover across Canada. This is the September departure from normal across Canada and Siberia. You can see a lot of positive anomalies with above normal snowfall in September. And this is the daily departure from the 2nd of November here. You can see some areas of positive, and some areas of negative departure. But the whole theme has been sort of above normal snowfall here across Siberia and northern Canada for the past month or so as we head into the first part of through the fall here. And this is from the Rutgers Global Snow Lab, which has a lot of really good stuff that's run by the State Climatologist Office in New Jersey at Rutgers. And so I used those 12 years and just highlighted those 12 years on the seasonal snowfall here that we've put together based on the data that is gathered down below us here at the shed for those 12 winters. And you can see that the majority of them are above the long-term average of 45. A few of them are the extreme winters. Interesting to note, though, so 8 of those 12 winters had above normal snowfall. 2 were well below normal down here, and then 2 were close to normal. It's interesting, though, that in 78, I guess in 79, yeah, 78, 79 was followed by, 77, 78 was followed by 2 winters of lower than normal snowfall, and then you had another sharp drop-off after the local maximum snowfall winter in 93, 94. So just a crude study sort of shows the chances, at least using analog years, are for normal to above normal snowfall. Just a quick little study on that. Now sort of transitioning to the current weather that we've had over the past week or so. I found this morning. This is from Cool Weather, and it's a loop of record temperatures over the past week. All the oranges and the yellows, reds are all the record high temps, and the blues are the record low temps. I'll start again here. So the 28th of October, record highs in the east. And then we get to the 30th of October and record highs some in the west. And then we see that cold front coming across the nation here with the record low temps from the Midwest and then down to the southeast. This is sort of cool animation with the different records that have been set recently across the United States. Surface map here this morning. This was the 12Z analysis, and that high pressure system down in the southeast here that was responsible for bringing the record cold temperatures to parts of the southeast over the weekend. Cold front moving through the middle of the country here, and high pressure across the Rockies. So overall, pretty quiet day in much of the nation as we head through this election day here. Still have Vance, that the moisture from Vance is fed up along this cold front here, so there's plenty of rain across the middle of the nation streaming along the front, but pretty nice in parts of the east, and here obviously a very nice early November day. But we'll see that this cold front here, the main story over the next couple of days, progresses eastward, and then we turn into a different type of weather pattern. It looks like it might even turn quite cold across the Great Lakes and Midwest next week. Any questions so far? All right, let's see here. Satellite image from earlier this morning. I thought this was really neat that you see the really clear delineation of clouds and clear sky here along the back edge. Just thought that was a really neat satellite image. Some high clouds here in the east this morning, but pretty fair under the high pressure here, and pretty quiet across the west too. So you can see the moisture from Vance here streaming all the way northeastward. Current radar, plenty of rain with those clouds here from Texas all the way into Michigan. And aside from that, though, clear in the east and mainly clear in the west. Some showers across eastern Washington to the northern part of Idaho this morning and into the later part, into the early part of the afternoon. Always like this here from the E-wall, the last 5 days, 500 millibar pattern. And the surface chart here. So back 5 days ago, we said we had a trough over the eastern United States, ridge across the west. And as we headed towards the end of Halloween week, see that this piece of energy right here dropped down from Canada. This was the piece of energy that went all the way down into Atlanta and it caused the snow in South Carolina. That drops all the way southward. Extremely impressive for this time of year, or really any time of year, but to see a max go from Hudson Bay all the way down across the Great Lakes, and as we head into the weekend here and through Halloween, we see that amplify and drop all the way down. I mean, it cuts off and it drops all the way through Augusta, Georgia. I think I heard from someone I worked with the other day that the standard deviations were about 6 standard deviations below normal in terms of heights across the southeast. With this thing is in emerged off the east coast, which is extremely impressive, obviously, when you get a -6 standard deviation. Pretty amplified pattern. That you can see it was a bit more of a zonal pattern across the United States here early in the time period, but pretty amplified across the Pacific, and then it amplified a lot as that piece of energy came into the east and then moved off the coast. Here's a system that brought the snow to New England on Sunday. And then you can see we sort of have some ridging aloft in the east here, trough digging into the southwest. But overall, pretty amplified pattern here across the entirety of the northern hemisphere over the past week or so. Let's see if we can get these things to all pop up here. I think by now that it would have loaded. I guess it has. It looks like it hasn't. So, in any event, so we'll take a look here at what's coming up over the next couple of days. Start looking at just the GFS and the European. So here's the European. See if I can get it bigger. Sort of scroll down there. Here's the European, the 0Z from last night. Front across the midsection of the nation, and disturbance moving into the Pacific Northwest. This all just progresses eastward here. The front in the east here sort of just loses its punch as it moves into Pennsylvania here this evening. Some rain for Pittsburgh, some lighter rain for Pittsburgh, it looks like, but it just all dries out, runs into a lot of dry air. The dew point here, now up to 24 degrees since I came in. But clearly when it's 63 over 24, you're going to have a hard time moistening it up outside. So this first wave of precip looks like it just fizzles. You can see that we go from this here at 12Z tomorrow morning, and then pretty dry across much of the east, according to the Euro. Still stays wet across the south-central portion of the U.S., though. And then as we head into tomorrow, so tomorrow's not a bad day. There'll be some clouds around, decently warm or mild at 850. 700 millibar moisture tomorrow here. Pretty dry, so probably some higher level clouds, but doesn't look all too cruddy of a day. Probably not as warm as today, but still not bad for the beginning of November. And then this wave of low pressure here that's across the Tennessee Valley moves on northward and sort of combines with this system that comes in from the Midwest here. This is the sort of the first cold punch over the next couple of days that slides across the Midwest into the eastern part of the U.S. And these help form a pretty substantial storm system by the time we get into Thursday night and Friday. So here's Thursday morning, according to your own rain overspreading the area. It looks like Thursday is the wettest day of the week. Pretty, just sort of a wet day in general, and probably some snow occurring across the Great Lakes at this point here as the cold air rushes southward. And then as we move forward through Thursday, this system deepens and moves off to the northeast. And there's probably a time period where it doesn't do a whole lot here. From later Thursday into Friday, there's probably a period of warm convection, and then as the system occludes and moves off to the east, you get that dry wedge, and then you get the back end moisture late Thursday night into Friday, where you just get the northwest flow, and we'll see some showers on Friday, and maybe even some snowflakes later Friday afternoon as thicknesses get down to 528 here, as modeled by the Euro. So a brief cold shot, but you can see that this trough here lifts out pretty quickly in the northeast as we head into Saturday, and right now Saturday you get a brief period of high pressure here that builds across the region and then slides out to sea by Saturday evening. So Saturday looks like a decent day right now. So it seems like it's a nice day tomorrow, wet on Thursday, and then Friday sort of showery, cold, windy, maybe some snow showers, and Saturday looks decent before we get stormy again. GFS has the similar idea. It looks like it hasn't loaded it here, so let me just go through the E-wall here and look at the GFS over from the 12Z run, the latest run here. See, here's the piece of energy coming into the east. And a pretty similar story here. It's a mainly rain event. The snow will be across the Great Lakes and then across the mountains of West Virginia and Laurel Highlands. The higher elevations come Friday. You get the good upslope. They had a couple inches down some of the highest elevations of Laurel Highlands. I guess it was Saturday probably. We had our cold, windy day for the football game, but a chilly end of the week here. So the GFS has a similar idea to what the Euro has. And now, since we're in range for the SREFs here, take a look at just probabilities of precipitation. Always like this tool to take a look at an ensemble of models to make sure that the operational models seem to have a decent handle on things. This is the probability of the preceding 12 hours having precipitation in them. So you can see this is, let's see, we'll go to Wednesday evening, so Thursday 0Z. You can see where it's most likely to be raining here across Texas all the way up through the Tennessee Valley. And then as that system starts to move northward on Thursday, good chances of rain as we get to the day Thursday. In fact, the SREFs here give us a 100% chance. All the ensemble members agree that we'll get some measurable precipitation here on Thursday. In fact, if you go down to this panel, this bottom left panel, this is the probability of greater than a half an inch of precipitation. And some decent probabilities, 45 to 55% across the Poconos into the Catskills. It looks like it will be a decent rain event for some people. They may get up to an inch in some spots. Just a wet Thursday into Thursday night for a lot of people. And then as we head into Friday, the storm starts to move off to the northeast, but still good chances of precip across the higher ground here on the northwest flow. And we all love snow, so let's take a look at the chances of snow with this system. Clearly across the Midwest, the Great Lakes with some snow, and then as this top panel here is the percent chance of snow according to the SREFs. And clearly a chance across the mountains of West Virginia, and some portion by Friday morning into northern Pennsylvania. And then it tries to sneak in at least some lower probabilities into the Poconos, and maybe here. It doesn't look like an accumulating event, just maybe some snow in the air on Friday afternoon here. Saw something this morning that caught my eye. I figured I'd share it with you guys, but this is the top here is 3 panels from the NAM at 0Z this morning, and this is the latest one on the bottom, the 12Z here. What caught my eye first was this temperature disparity. So the 0Z run had us in the 50s on Thursday afternoon here, with 60s just nudging up to our south, close to Lewistown here. Here's a 12Z run. We're stuck in the 40s all day, according to the NAM. So it's just interesting to note here, I mean, that the wind direction, especially this time of year, really matters. Here's the upper air from the 0Z, and here's the surface. You can see that the low is slightly further north here across the east than it is at 12Z here. So you basically have a northeast flow on the 12Z run and a south flow of air on the 0Z run. So just something to keep in mind, that it could be 55 here on Thursday, or it could be 45. I think I'd lean towards the warmer number. I can't say I've looked at it really in detail, but clearly just a couple, 50 to 100 miles of difference really makes a difference in terms of temperatures. So just something to keep in mind for forecasting for Thursday around here. And I'll end here in the last part of this just with a bit of a long-range look, and that relates to what's happening in the Western Pacific, which is this morning's shot here of Typhoon Nuri, which is the southeast of Japan. Continues to look extremely impressive on satellite as it starts to head off here to the north and east. It's going to bypass Japan to the east, but recurving typhoon, the typical rule is 6 to 10 days later you have a trough that enters the eastern United States, and it looks like that will occur once again. So typhoon recurving here today or so, and you add about a week to that, which is the middle or so of next week, and looks like another trough really starts to dive in to the east as we head into next week. See if I can get that to load here. That's always a question. But maybe. While I wait for that, I'll just show you what the GFS ensembles have for next week here. So the 2 meter temperature departure for normals for next week. Here's day 7. So here's next. Let's see. This is valid next Tuesday at 0Z. So next Monday, cool and normal anomalies across the east, and that stays that way here as we head through much of next week. So a chillier pattern. Some of the ensemble members are quite cold. Look at this one here. Very cold across the east. But in general, there's a main theme of most of them have a cooler than normal look across the eastern U.S. I also like the 7-day running mean here, where it averages the previous 7 days. So this is the 7-day period ending next Monday. So a cooler than normal stretch through the east, and that sort of stays the same as we head through next week. So a cool pattern in the east, trough in the east, and fairly mild in the west, and that corresponds nicely to the recurving typhoon rule of a trough in the east 6 to 10 days after the recurve. I'll also show just the heights for next week on the GFS ensembles here. This is the mean and the anomalies here in the middle, and each of the ensemble members here separately. So here's today, ridge in the east. We get the trough that comes in. It gives us a rain Thursday, and then maybe some snow showers by Friday afternoon. That lifts off to the east, and then the big plunge here as we head into the beginning of next week and Sunday, and then sort of stays that way through next week. Just a mean trough in the east, a ridge in the west. And look at all this ridging going on across and the positive height anomalies across western Canada, which is sort of helping lock this trough into the east here. And the last thing I'll show, just to give a sense of how this all looks in the big picture, here's the Northern Pacific map background. So here's Nuri, here's Alaska up here, and the west coast of the U.S. So you can see the typhoon moves up and just skirts Japan, moves off to the east, and then gets caught up in this system as it comes across Russia and deepens substantially as it heads into the Bering Sea here, as sub 950 according to the Euro. These systems can really deepen and bomb out dramatically this time of year up there. But interestingly, you see this all this bridging across Bering Sea here, moving into northern Alaska, across the northern part of Alaska, and then into western Canada. And again, that allows for that trough to sort of stay locked in the eastern U.S. as we head into next week. I think I'll leave it there and answer any questions.
Any questions from Dan? Mind coming over? What we have today?
With the incoming trough coming this weekend, I know some of the models have been developing a storm system with that. Are there any thoughts with that, or is it too early to tell?
Well, we'll just show the Canadian from yesterday, since you brought it up. If it, I guess it's not going to load. That's too bad. That's too bad. Well, the Canadian from yesterday had some snow across the east Sunday, but that's a good point. Looks like this may have frozen up here on me. In any event. So here's the disturbance from the end of the week, Thursday to Friday. This is the energy to worry about in terms of the storm that comes in the Pacific Northwest on Thursday into Friday. And that slides across and then dives southward and really amplifies as we get into Sunday. So here's the mean trough in the east on Sunday morning. Extremely substantial again. It's interesting how we've seen to have repeated this pattern from last week, where you have this piece of energy drop way into the southeast, especially for this time of year. But you can see precip developing along the southeast coast. It looks to me like everything would have to come really perfectly together for this thing to be an impact in terms of snowstorm. Definitely think there's rain along the coast. If it deepens fast enough, and there's enough cold air behind it, it just doesn't look like it has the classic setup to be an early season snowstorm, I don't think. You have just a lot of energy in the flow, and you'd have to get the phasing right. It would have to deepen at the right time, but you certainly have enough cold air across the Midwest. So if it were to deepen quick enough and maybe come like inland a bit from the coast, you might be able to get snow on the backside of it. It's sort of hard this time of year, obviously, to get a snowstorm, especially in the major cities of the East Coast. But definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't think there's really enough confidence to say anything precip-wise, but there's certainly enough confidence to say it looks like there's a storm along the coast somewhere late this weekend.
Another question over here?
Steve.
The explosive cyclogenesis over the Bering Sea looks very interesting in that some of the model runs actually had a sub 920 flow forming, which is pretty extreme. So I was wondering if you can take a closer look and maybe
let me
figure out what's going on there.
Absolutely.
Leading to something historically deeper.
Let me see if we can get this to load here. But that's a great point that's made there about the system in the Bering Sea. And I saw I was looking at it earlier, hadn't pulled it up earlier, but there's a huge jet stream across the whole region. It's like 250. I'm not sure if you looked at it, Steve, but it's quite impressive. And that's definitely part of it. It gets into a right entrance region of a jet streak and really deepens here. And that's what I'm trying to show you if this would load. All right. At least here's the Euro depiction of the system come Saturday morning, which is more like Friday night in Alaska time. But so here's 9:20. Let's see, that would be 9:24. Right at that frame. Let me pull up that Northern Pacific one again and show you the jet stream across the Pacific here. And I picked the wrong one. Yeah, I did. But that's extremely impressive. Huge ridge out ahead of it, and then 498 heights. That's pretty impressive. And then it fills in. It's now up to 952 by Sunday. It doesn't look all that windy for Alaska until maybe later into next week, but it's pretty stormy for parts of Siberia there in northern Russia. Here's what we're talking about in terms of the jet streak. This is the 250 millibar winds this afternoon. 150. Let's see, what's the 180 knot core here, and right entrance region here, and that sort of dies out. But as you can see from, and there we go again into Thursday, 200 knot jet streak across the Northern Pacific, and that really allows the cyclone to deepen to what could be sub 920 or somewhere around that, which would be, I'm not sure if there's a record, but it's extremely impressive.
Any other questions for Dan? Okay, thank you, Dan. Next week, there's another AccuWeather forecaster coming in. His name's Eric Pindrock. He's been, I think, with us since I started with everything, so he'll be here next week. Penny. I'm just pointing over on the table.
That is awesome. Look at that. Look at that. There's your jet stream, right entrance, and then it goes right underneath the right